Welcome back to another week and another episode where we take a topic and we discuss it, debate it, chop it up with the chat. The future of Xbox, debating it with my good friend 30 and So Gaming here. We don't even call this anything. This is just something that we do with y'all. And I hope you guys are supporting 30 over there on his channel, 30NSG. If you're looking for his content, his shows, make sure and check him out over there. And I wanted to chop this up with him because I chopped it up with you guys a little bit, but more has come out. A lot of you guys are coming hot off the presses of my upload about 343 potentially getting removed from Halo, and a bunch of former 343 employees continue to speak out about just the abysmal state of the development of that game, poor management, incompetent leadership, working under the 18-month contractual policies of Microsoft. And now folks are pulling out Phil Spencer's commentary. You know, he's saying, if we go wrong with Halo, we go wrong with Xbox. But then I know Mike's got something that Phil said that really was like, wait a minute, why'd you say that? So I'm going to be chopping this up with Mike, but we're also going to be chopping it up with you, chat. Last week was amazing. We debated Hogwarts Legacy live service, and Mike and I basically just tag-teamed debating chat, and it was awesome. So I don't know if he and I are going to agree on everything today.
Better watch out, chat. Better watch out.
Yeah, but feel free to chime in, disagree, agree, and do me a favor. If you came over from the other videos and streams this morning, smash that like button. Get us our first 100 likes. Mike, what is your take? Why am I not on streamer mode? That's so annoying in OBS. It's going to do that. If I don't, I'll forget it. I guess we'll just have to deal with that. Mike, when you saw this transpire, what did you think about what was going on? I'm going to go full screen for myself for just a second, but listen to what Mike has to say.
First off, when they had the layoffs, I have a buddy that works for Microsoft. So when I saw it, I called him up and I was like, "Are you affected by this in any way, shape, or form?" He's like, "No, he wasn't personally, but he's not a developer. He's on sales side. So he had a lot of people from his office get canned." And I was like, oh, okay. So I looked at that first. And then the second, I was like, all right, we've been asking for 343 to lose Halo, right? And I know a lot of people are I mean, it's sad that people have to lose their job. It is what it is, right? I mean, it happens all the time. Big layoffs. Amazon's doing it. Facebook's doing it. Twitter's doing it. They're all doing it. But for 343 losing the campaign stuff, we were asking for them to lose it. And the biggest shocker for me is that Phil Spencer said, I think it was like a year and a half ago, and he said, Halo is not going to make, or what we're doing with Halo is not going to make or break the franchise. And that echoed in my head. I always come back to it and always bring it up, because to say that to your franchise that literally puts you on the map, like Bungie put Halo and Master Chief on the map when Xbox first came out. That's what they did. And it became one of the best-selling games of all time. 20 years later to say, well, it's not going to make or break the franchise. At that point, to me, when he said it, me and Sarge on our podcast, we talked about it and said, they don't care if it succeeds or fails because it's so big, it's not going to fail, right? And that's the way they feel about it. So much so that right now in China, when they're selling the Xboxes, okay, on the back of the boxes now, Master Chief and Halo are no longer there, right? It's Starfield. Starfield is there. And that's their main franchise now. But it won't be their main franchise going forward, because their actual main franchise is Game Pass. And Game Pass is what they're pushing on. So now that 343 is out of the picture, for the most part that we know for the campaign, you know, are they going to give it to another company, or like hand it to another company? Are they going to let other companies go, hey, who's interested that doesn't have something? Because I really think 343 from the very beginning, they created them to just hand them this project. And I don't think they were ever passionate about the project, right? If you look at what Halo has been since 343 has had it, you look at Bungie, they created Halo and they were passionate about Halo. They left and they were passionate about making Destiny. And look what they've done with Destiny. Like, you can see the passionate about their IP that they created themselves, where 343 was handed this project and they just never landed the plane on that runway with Halo, at least in my eyes, right? Their best game is still worse than the worst game that Bungie put out for Halo in my eyes. I don't know how chat feels about that. And I feel like they've always missed the bar with 343. So the writing on the wall for 343 not being able, and I think they will lose, and I think they'll still work on it, but they won't be the the main studio going forward. There'll be a support studio for whoever they bring in to take over this franchise, because it doesn't really matter. It's not going to make or break it. And they'll just reboot it or add on to it as they go. I mean, I don't know if Halo Infinite's dead. I think they're just kind of on hiatus, sort of like Division 2 was on hiatus for like a year. And then they'll try to like figure stuff out and then all of a sudden give it to a company and then start reworking stuff.
Yeah, the video everybody just came from, that's essentially what everybody's saying. Like, there are people saying, listen, 343 is being sort of repurposed, retasked. And a lot of us said that. We thought, you're going to shrink them so much. Like, what is going on? Like, what are you going to use them for? And at this point, I would imagine they're around 200 employees, maybe less. Right. And it's like, well, then what are you going to use them for? Well, a lot of people were asking for that. And I felt really bad. I remember when people were saying, this is time for 343 to be fired. This is time for 343 to be removed. And I was like, Detective Seeds tipped me $5 and said, it was a good vid. Glad to see you highlight the contract issues. I tried to highlight that the last time. I was like, this can't all be on 343 at this point. It's like they've been mismanaged. So sure, look at 343 leadership, but are the devs this incompetent? And I've always said, I don't think so. It's got to be this contractual policy. Look at Twitter. The layoffs spark a fire. And everyone's like, bro, it's the contracts. It's getting pulled off the project. There were people that were like, I would have loved to have stayed on. It was like, Microsoft has to look in the mirror and ask, is this going to work long term? Like, what are you going to do when Bethesda has to work under these conditions? Because both Redfall and Starfield were not developed under these conditions.
Right.
So they're not in
Microsoft at that time.
Right. They're not in. Those games are not indicative of what happens underneath Microsoft's ownership. We're already hearing that Fable may be going the same direction. It's like, we're just going to keep wrecking franchises. Like, what does this make you think about the ABK deal, the Activision Blizzard deal?
Well, I don't know if this is coincidence. We talked about this yesterday on my live stream and also on the podcast. Don't you find it a little weird? And I know this is a completely different conversation, but they fired 10,000 people, right? They laid off 10,000 people. And then miraculously, if and when the deal goes through, Activision Blizzard's got 9,800 employees, right? So all of a sudden, they bring 9,800 people over to fill in the gaps of 10,000 people. Obviously, it's 200 people less than what they have, so they're saving money there. And then they'll probably let go of other people once that happens as well, right? Once it comes over, because they want to put some of their people in charge of certain things and, clean house a little bit, bring in your own guys. So I find that a little strange that 10,000 is the number, 9,800 people is what's coming over. I do believe that Microsoft is going to use either Sledgehammer or Treyarch or somebody that's doing Call of Duty to work on Halo in the future, right? Make them the main studio to work on it, and then have 343 as their companion studio to help them do stuff, right? Like, I don't know. That's just my gut feeling from the bat. Somebody from that Activision Blizzard, and I do believe, and I know this is a completely different conversation, but I do believe all the stuff that's happening with the EU and NVIDIA and Google, this deal is going to go through regardless, and we could talk about that another time. But I think Microsoft is going to get this deal regardless, and because of the structure they've done stuff and the contracts they've already done ahead, like they already know they have it, right? And this is just the public eyes looking at it going, no, they're not going to get it, but they already know they have it, and they're just placing the pieces. They're moving the chess pieces to make the move, right? To say checkmate.
Yeah, I would say they're really confident it's going to go through. I don't know if it's going through, but Microsoft is counting their chickens before they're hatched. They're like, oh, yeah, we're going to be able to count on this deal because, and this was something that many people were saying. Creature, my producer, said this. He was like, they're going to get this deal, and they're going to throw somebody like Sledgehammer at Halo, and they're going to put Halo on quality assurance for Call of Duty. And we laughed, but now I'm like, wait a minute, that seems like that's kind of the plan. If you guys didn't watch the upload, make sure and go watch my upload and support that video. It's a solid video. I really felt good about it. I felt this is huge if they are essentially saying Halo Infinite's EOL. That's end of life, baby. I mean, if you're only going to support its multiplayer, this time next year, it's done.
Right.
Just put a fork in it. And 343 is going to help other companies start to make Halo content, which, if that video that I made and all that stuff is to be believed, they're sticking with the Slipspace engine. Why? Why would you stick with this engine? Not only that, you've got first-party engines for Bethesda with Creation. You got Playground Games using the Forza Tech engine for Fable. And that just hits like an explosion of planets and creates a horrible situation when you combine it with the contract policy. Everybody's got to come in and learn your engine, and then they're gone 18 months later.
Right.
They have to change this policy. Do you think that Microsoft's going to respond to any of this criticism at all, any of the public outcry from former developers at all, or is it just, no, this is our policy, we're continuing?
Yeah, no, I don't think they will, because all big businesses, I always call them as Unicron, right? Big companies have to keep eating. They have to just keep moving forward. They got to find the planet to eat. They crush and take anything that's nutrients. They suck it in, spit everything else out, and they just keep moving forward because they have to keep this trajectory of profits, and they always have to go up. They can't ever go down. If they go down, that's people get fired, right? Even when they had their most successful year ever in the history of Microsoft for Xbox, where they made $3.61 billion, they just let go of 10,000 people, right? And that's when they're most profitable. So it's just uncanny. Real quick, I want to answer Detective C. He says, I push back on the specific example, Mike, because not all 10,000 are gaming division. I never said they were, right? I literally started the whole conversation off calling my friend up who's in sales and asked if he was okay. Obviously, there's people in resources and sales and everything else. Do you think all 9,800 people coming from Activision are all developers? No, that's everybody that works for the company. The person that's answering the door at the front, the receptionist,
good point.
The tax guy, everybody. They're all coming over. They're all coming over. They had to make room for the people that are coming over.
As far as Halo goes, and in the future of Xbox, with what you said about Starfield, when we first started streaming over here on this channel, I think I had like 5,000 subscribers. One of the shows I did was I predicted that Starfield was the new flagship because Halo was just in such bad shape. It's like there's Starfield. It's Starfield. Starfield's the flagship. This Halo's not gonna cut it. We did everything we could to cover Halo Infinite, and from the Halo Battle Pass to the season format. I mean, Halo Infinite Season 3 is about to start. It wouldn't surprise me if that's basically the last seasonal update, or they literally just rotate cosmetics and events. They'll just keep recycling cosmetics and live events that they've already used. When it comes to the future of Halo, if it's no longer the flagship and they have all these other companies coming in and making content, what type of a Halo game do you think we're going to get? Because apparently they scrapped plans for DLC. Now, Jez Corden is saying that those plans didn't exist. I don't. He's gotten a couple things right recently, and I was like, I think we can trust this guy. I think he's got reliable information. But I find it extremely hard to believe that Joseph Staten did not have DLC plans and story plans for Halo Infinite. If they just purely go multiplayer, I don't know. Does that change the fabric of Halo so much that it's no longer really Halo if you don't have that front centerpiece campaign with Master Chief?
Wasn't there a story though that Halo cut a whole bunch of like content originally? So like that would be DLC. So they could have already worked on it, but it wasn't ready yet, right? They cut what was it, 2/3 or 1/3? I forget what Jason Schreier reported on chat.
It was the map size and world size. Yeah, they cut it down. They cut it down by a couple thirds. Either 1 or 2/3 was just cut.
Yeah. So obviously, because they cut the map size down, there was probably story elements that moved you over to that part of the map, right? Which they probably said, oh, you know what? It's not ready yet for launch. This is a live service game. It's a Game Pass game. Let's push it out later. And then they finally just said, yeah, let's just scrap it, right? We'll just worry about the multiplayer and whatnot. I don't know the numbers. They don't tell you the numbers. We do know the sales numbers. I think 2 million sales of people bought Halo. Okay. Everybody else played Halo for free, basically, because they paid $10. I know someone's gonna say it's not free, but it's $10, it's $15. You're basically renting the game from like Blockbuster back in the day, okay? and you're just playing and renting the game. So there's this whole new like mentality of everybody that has a game that comes out for Xbox, they're like, I'm not gonna buy it. I'm just gonna play it on Game Pass, right? So moving forward, I think they just cut the campaign because the people that are playing it are playing on Game Pass anyway. They don't care if people buy the DLC because they have the free multiplayer that you don't even need Game Pass, and they're making cosmetic sales on that. They're making the battle pass on that. They're making money from there. So to put the money into campaign, to have production of campaign, to put that in there, to have people that just pay for Game Pass to get more DLC. You see what I'm saying? Like, are they giving that free DLC? Are they paying for that DLC? What's the structure? They don't know. Hence why they got rid of the campaign crew for 343, because they're like, the multiplayer I'll keep it alive until we decide what we want to do with this. Because if you're coming in day one right now, you got it for Christmas, all of a sudden you download Halo off the Game Pass, you can play through the campaign. Someone in chat, who was it, that said, I just played Halo, I had a fun time, right? That's just it. If you just play it, you're going to play the campaign, you're going to have a grand old time, you put it down, and that's it, you move on.
Yeah. Wheezy is clarifying. Jez said that the DLC was not in active development. That's not what the leak was. So he must have been responding to somebody else or some other rundown of this. The rundown that I read was they had plans for campaign and DLC. Joseph Staten was working with a small team. That doesn't surprise me at all. In some of the earliest marketing, Joseph Staten said that you would be going out on missions with your Spartan, and many of us started speculating they're going to try to slow bake this game into a Destiny-style game where your Spartan is your character. You're no longer going to play as Master Chief. That was Joseph Staten's view for the game, which is not surprising. He came from Bungie. He worked on Destiny in its earliest stages. So that didn't surprise me at all. And those things getting scrapped and leaning on the multiplayer only, that to me says now's the time to ditch this engine. Now's the time to really dig down. Hand it to a team and put this thing in Unreal 5 or put this thing in an engine that ID Software, Doom's creator. Let them have it or something instead of just continuing to use the slip space thing, because it's like, what on earth? You're just going to do the same thing. You're going to put us on the same trajectory. Detective with another $5 tip says, I personally think they should convert all studios to Unreal 5. What are your guys' thoughts on having Xbox studio games operating on one engine? I would love that. You already have the Coalition and Ninja Theory on Unreal 5. I don't think Bethesda could do it. I think Creation Engine's too endemic to their process. But I think you could convert a lot of the studios to Unreal 5. I think that makes it easier to hire talent at the very least, because then when they come in, you have Unreal 5 devs that you can just hire, that you don't have to train on your engine. I still think the 18-month contract needs to go. It needs to go. But if you're going to keep it, then at least get more studios on Unreal 5 so your talent pool widens out in the industry.
I look at that a little differently. I like the Unreal Engine. I think it's great. It's much easier. What Tim Sweeney talks about, how the industry can put all their assets and they can get faster. They can make things faster. But I don't want every company using the Unreal Engine, because I think that also stagnates like competition, right? And I think, like Google has their proprietary stuff. Apple has their proprietary stuff. Like, you have to have your proprietary systems for certain companies, because you want to invest in your developers, right? And if everybody's working on the same engine, then everyone's disposable. You see what I'm saying? On a business aspect, right? Because if there's only one engine out there that rules them all, then the competition is going to be between the devs itself, and you're disposable real fast. Because if you're a person that knows their engine for their company, then you're there longer, and then you train people underneath you, and it has this like mentor type of system. Like if they hire someone for Ubisoft, or they hire someone for another company that's using EA, they're using the Frostbite engine, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they switch over to Unreal Engine and everyone's using Unreal Engine, then there is no competition. Everyone's just, well, if you don't do your job well, you're gone, right? We just bring in the next person that knows Unreal Engine, because everyone uses Unreal Engine. I don't know. I don't really believe in one engine rules them all. I like the fact that there's different engines for different companies, and people that work for that company are longevity. They're there. That's why you see devs working for companies for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because once they're there, they're there. The reason they usually leave is because they got bought out by a bigger conglomerate and they want to go start over again in their own new studio. But for the most part, the old timers stay with the same company with the same engine because they're masters of their craft for that engine, instead of everybody knows that one engine. I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
I would only agree with you if they ditched the 18-month contract policy, because then you could bring people in and train them on your slip space creation or whatever engine.
You're talking about, I'm talking specifically across the whole industry. You're talking about Xbox only using the slip space and 18-month contracts, right? Because the 18 months contract is not standard around the whole industry.
Yeah. It's a Microsoft policy.
Yeah, it's a Microsoft policy.
Yeah, so if they acquire Activision Blizzard and there's a bunch of studios using their own first-party engines, in walks the contract policy and screws all that up. It's like anybody you onboard walks out the door a year and a half later. I do disagree slightly, though, with what you're saying about it being bad for competition, because if everybody's on Unreal, it actually drives big talent and good developers to be sought after and paid handsomely. And the other thing that you get is, imagine somebody finishes working on a project, their contract ends, and they were working on some big Unreal Engine open world awesome game, and then they come and they help out some other company, they get hired, and they could say, hey, we learned all these tricks, we learned all these loopholes with the engine that you can do. I'm bringing my knowledge to the table. I think you get that. You don't get that when people come from completely different engines. Being able to come to the table and say, yo, I learned a bunch. I was working for 4 years over there. There's all these things you can do with Unreal that we figured out over the last 5 years, and a rising tide lifts all boats, right? That shared knowledge would raise the efficacy and the efficiency of anybody working in Unreal, because all that shared knowledge would just start to go back and forth instead of everybody being siloed in their own tech. I'm not saying, as Eugene says, I'm not saying it's a Swiss Army knife engine. I don't think everybody needs to switch to it, but I think a lot of companies are switching to it, and there's good reason too.
Well, they're switching to it because once the assets are made by anybody, they're put into the store and they're shared, and then you can purchase the assets that are already made. So that saves a huge amount of time, because if I have to build, let's say Division 2 Massive used Unreal Engine, right? And they built all of Manhattan and they put it inside the engine, and someone's like, I want to make a game, it's set in New York. Well, instead of paying someone to sit down there and create the whole buildings again, they can literally just pay Epic the licensing fee of whoever created that, and then they can use those same assets, right? That's the saving time and grace. I look at this from a film standpoint. When I went to school, the Avid was the editing software that everyone used, right? And then Final Cut Pro came into the mix, and everyone was Avid. Well, Avid was this expensive system, and everyone had to know Avid. But then when Final Cut came in, it made Avid get better, because if there's one thing, they get lazy at what they do, right? You can use this as in sports with Madden football. There's one football game, so they're lazy at making that football game because there's no competition, right? So if there's only, in my opinion, if there's only one engine, competition-wise, sure, for developers, it makes it easier for developers and stuff. But for games in general, I think we become lazier. I'm not doing a direct shot at like developers becoming lazy. What I'm saying is it makes it easier, but then there's one person can make a bigger game, and it kind of waters down what it is. I feel like more people need to know more different things. You shouldn't just have one engine, one NFL, one of anything. You should have multiple competitions, right? Like, for instance, we're on YouTube. There's Twitch, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Twitter, TikTok. There's other areas where you can stream. If there was only one, they could make the rules and do what they want, and then that's it. There's no competition.
Well, I do think there's fears there of like, well, Epic would be able to control everything and raise the prices, but I also think some of what people are saying is not demonstrable in the market. Like telling people that like, oh, if everybody switches to Unreal, it's going to dilute creativity and all the games are going to look the same. Like, really, does Fortnite look anything like Hellblade 2? Do either of those games look like Gears? Like, games that are in Unreal don't look like each other. I don't think that's demonstrable in the market. Like Epic with Unreal and Fortnite, it looks nothing like Hellblade 2. What's the same dadgum engine? Now, I understand that concern of like, well, Epic will raise the prices. They'll control the market. Yeah, that's a possibility, sure. And, you know, Wheezy is mentioning the fact that it's happening with certain tech parts right now, like hardware pieces. Yeah, that can certainly happen, but you can also have the benefit of everybody using the same technology and being able to have that shared knowledge. Like in film and even in music, if you have people that are super familiar with the same hardware, the same tech, the same cameras, the same recording equipment, well, then any guy can get planted in the studio and help out. He can be hired and start working. I don't know if it's a one-size-fits-all engine. I don't think that's true at all. I don't want everybody on the engine, but I do wonder if the larger studios will benefit because they need the largest staff, and then you have a bigger pool of people to hire from. Like, I don't think smaller studios should all be switching to it. I think they'd be the easiest to be damaged by, royalty changes. But I think larger studios could afford to do it.
Well, also look, I like the Unreal Engine, but a lot of Unreal Engine, if you look at Gotham Knights, if you look at what's the other game that's coming out, Hogwarts Legacy's Unreal Engine 4, a lot of people were talking about how Unreal Engine 4 is not very good at open world stuff, but yet we have open world games coming out with Unreal Engine. They're like struggling. So obviously, in this conversation, Unreal Engine is not the answer right now for one shoe fits all type of thing. There's certain engines that do better work with large scale or first person shooters and stuff like that. So right now we're being like fortune tellers to try to see what happens in the future with the thing, right? So right now there's plenty of other engines out there, and certain times you need a wrench, you need a screwdriver, you need a hammer. You can't use one tool to use them all, right? So Unreal Engine is for particular types of games. Unity is for particular types of games, and I think that's the way it should be and will be going into the future. I just think Unreal Engine will be that engine until someone else comes up with something that competes with it.
To bring things back to the future of Xbox, because we got to ask that question, like, should Xbox switch all their studios to Unreal? I do think some of them should consider switching to Unreal, and it crossed 343's mind apparently at one point. They actually considered switching off. So let's place. So let's springboard off of that. We've got Starfield apparently coming this year, and now there's rumors swirling that it's gotten delayed again. And I do not think the Xbox layoffs have anything to do with that. As far as we can tell, the Bethesda departments that were hit were like publishing or something. So, what do you think the impact though of the layoffs and the contract policies that we're seeing exposed by former 343 employees? What do you think the impact that will have on not only Starfield, but future Bethesda titles? Like, we're looking at Bethesda right now struggling to get their two games out the door, Redfall and Starfield, and they don't even, as far as we know, like, most of these games were developed outside of Microsoft ownership. Looking at 343 and Halo, Fallout 5, Elder Scrolls 6, where do you think we're headed with those titles and Bethesda under Microsoft ownership?
So you're saying, well, see, this is me just shooting in the dark because I don't know what the contract of Bethesda, like, for instance, when Bungie got bought out by Sony, they had their strict contract saying that Sony's not telling us what to do. We're standalone. We do our own thing. So I don't know what the contract was for Bethesda to, like, after these games that are in production, any game after this, you have to use the 18-month contractual people. I don't know if that's a thing, or if Bethesda and ZeniMax they're still operating underneath their own, but they have the resources of Xbox and the Game Pass outlet type of thing. I don't know what they're thinking. If they have to, let's say they're under contract and Fallout 5 and Elder Scrolls 6 comes out and they have to use the 18 months, I think we're going to see a big shift of more poorly receptive games. Now, when I say poorly receptive, like, games take 3 to 5 years. Like, big games like this take 3 to 5, if not longer, to develop. And the way the 18-month thing is going on, we know games in the past made in 18 months. Destiny was rebooted and then made in 18 months. Anthem was rebooted and made in like 13 or 18 months. Fallout 76 itself, I think, was made in like 12 or 13 months, something like that, originally. And if they're doing the 18-month contractual stuff, then games would take 18 months to get made and put out. All right, hear me out. So 18 months, you start on day one, 18 months later, that game is released onto Game Pass because it's first-party title, right? So let's say Fallout 5 comes out, it would be 18 months development time. They would just throw it onto the system of Game Pass because that's what they need to make money on, right? They need people to come in to get Game Pass. And Todd Howard himself, and I'm speaking about Bethesda now, said, and this is not out of context, he said it's not about how the game launches, but it's how it finishes, okay? And he's always said in another statement, he said that they were really upset that they couldn't have that connection with people that played Oblivion and Morrowind and Skyrim, okay? Because once they bought the game, they were disconnected from it. Hence why Fallout 76 came, and they made it a light MMO. It fits perfect on Game Pass now. They developed it before they got bought out, but now it fits perfectly on Game Pass. People come in, they have, I think, I think it's like 13.2 million people have played Fallout 76 on the system. And now going forward, they could potentially have these games that are put out 18, 24 months, and then they'll just fix it in year 2, 3, 4, and 5. And 5 years down the road, now the game is perfect. Look at the examples that are already on Game Pass from Microsoft. Sea of Thieves came out. I play tested that game for 2 years, and when it came out, it was a shell of a game than it is today. It's awesome today. Lots of content to do in Sea of Thieves, but year one, it was developed for 2 years. It was launched after 2 years, and it was a half a game. Now it's out for 6 years, and now the game is really good. No Man's Sky, same kind of situation, right? Obviously, they're not part of Xbox, but they came out, small studio, 14 people. It was a shell of a game, and then all of a sudden, now you look at No Man's Sky, 6 years later, it's a fantastic game. So this is Fallout 76. 4 years later, it's a fantastic game, but when it came out, it was in rough shape. So this is what I'm worried about. I'm worried about that Microsoft, with the 18-month contractual stuff, is going to put games out early just to put them on Game Pass, and they'll get fixed in year 2, 3, 4, 5, right?
Yeah, the challenge there is that if your prediction comes true, that Game Pass ecosystem is going to feel pretty crummy, because if all you're doing is getting games that don't feel complete, or they're busted or rushed to market, Game Pass, I would imagine a Game Pass subscriber, they're going to be the fastest person to throw the game in the bin and be like, I didn't pay for it, so I've got no skin in the game. You know, a lot of people use Game Pass as like I try everything that, you know, kind of piques my interest. Well, if you're quote unquote trying something, you're not going to play it for very long if it's like half baked. So I think that would be the challenge, is that if that's the rhythm, because, you know, Jason B in chat was kind of giving me grief. He was like, they're struggling to get these games out. And it's like, well, yeah, they've delayed Starfield and Redfall multiple times. I think it's fair to use that word, like they're struggling to get some games out. And Detective Seeds is kind of agreeing with me. He's like, you have 25 studios. Where are all the first-party titles? Yes, Xbox right now seems to be struggling to get first-party games to market. This could be the year that the cadence and the rhythm is set. And I would love for that to happen. Like, do you think I like having a Series X with virtually no big first-party titles to play on? And it's a massive bummer. I'm really looking forward to playing Starfield. And if Todd Howard's view of Starfield is, you know, it's not about how you launch, it's about how the game ends up, I really hope they're not applying that logic to Starfield, because all they're going to do is reinvigorate the memes and the vernacular of, oh, it's Bethesda and their games always need to be saved by the modding community. Enough is enough. I don't think you can continue to ship games in that way. I think that was an acceptable thing when you were kind of blowing the doors off gaming with things like Skyrim, where it's like, well, this is one of the only games like this. You know, everyone always wants to point to Oblivion and Morrowind, and I'm like, yeah, but Skyrim's commercial success was undoubtedly the biggest game for them at that time. Like, nothing really rivaled it. There weren't other games out there like that. And truth be told, if Microsoft has a pretty good year this year, and some of that's attributed to Starfield, the real question is, where do we go from here? Without buying Bethesda, they wouldn't have Starfield and Redfall this year. They would have Forza Motorsport and Minecraft Legends, and that's about it. So
right.
Where do you see Avowed, Fable, Hellblade 2, and some of these other games landing? Are we even going to see them in this year? Because if we're talking the future of Xbox, you got to have a cadence of games. You can't have one good year and then be like, hey, we finally had a good year. It needs to be continued every year.
Well, look, the developers, to go back a little bit, the developers, when the game's delayed or not delayed, this is BS, right? Because they know when the game's done, right? Like, when you work on something, if I'm carving a piece of wood and I'm going to sell this piece of wood, right? I know when I'm going to be done with this carving, right? I don't say, hey, I'm not going to make a date up and go, it'll be ready by tomorrow. I know what I can do and how to complete this carving of the wood to get it ready to put up for sales, right? They know what they need the time for to push it out, right? They're the ones that put out the date. They're the ones that put out the stuff to say, hey, look, we're ready to show you this stuff, and then it goes dark, right? This is all on them. This is not on people like us on YouTube. I had a guy come in my comment section and say, it's people like you that report on stuff like this, why the games are delayed. I go, really? You really think because I say it's going to get delayed? They're like, the guy with 1,500 subscribers said that we're going to be delayed, so we're going to delay it, right? You're a moron if you think that, okay? Okay, so it's the companies themselves that set these unattainable contracts or unattainable dates that they're going to release the date on. And then they get mad at us and make articles about us. It's the fans. The fans are the ones that made this delayed. No. It's upper management 100% that make these games come out. The investors they want the return on money. They're like, well, you've had our money for 3 years. Where's the game? They're like, we got it. Don't worry. It's like borrowing money from your cousin that's part of the mafia, right? Hey, can I borrow $100? Yeah, sure. You can borrow $100. You got interest. You got it tomorrow. Tomorrow, you got the money back? No, I don't have it tomorrow. Well, yeah, I want my payback. You're like, whoa, well, what about Friday? Well, Friday, I'm going to have to give you a little bit more interest, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's what these investors are. So they want to see in turn investment on this stuff. And these companies are forced, not the developers, the guys who make the decisions, not the developers. The developers are the worker ants, okay? But the queen bees up on top are the ones saying, yeah, November 11th, 2022, that's when the date is. And then all of a sudden, a couple of months before, they're like, we're going to put it in the first half of the year, but we don't know the actual date yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. The quickest game that Bethesda's ever released is Fallout 76, 5 months, right? From when they said it at E3 to when it launched was 5 months. Todd Howard, in an interview with IGN 3 years ago, said he would like to go even shorter than that. He would like to go less than 5 months. He said in even a week. He said, but don't quote me on it. I'm quoting on you. I'm quoting it, okay? He said even a week. So now you look at they're part of Microsoft and they're part of Game Pass. Well, if Todd Howard wants to come out with it in less than a week, he could do it. You know why? Because he's not selling Starfield. They're selling Starfield on Game Pass. Game Pass is the seller, right? Sure, there's going to be people that buy Starfield. Sure, there's going to be people that buy collector's editions because whatever Bethesda puts out, those fans are going to eat up and buy. But majority of the people, if you have an Xbox right now and you have Game Pass, why would you purchase Starfield on top of paying for Game Pass when it's coming to Game Pass already, right? So a huge amount of people are going to buy it digitally, or they're just going to download it digitally from Game Pass. So all of this with these delays is going to be delayed. I do think it's going to be delayed, but for that sprite moment of Todd Howard saying that it doesn't matter if it comes out broke or buggy, it's not how it comes out, it's how it finishes, and he wants to put a game out earlier than it's ready. They could come out February and say, hey, here's Starfield in all its glory, and we're dropping it on Friday, on Tuesday, and they go, we're dropping it on Friday. That would make the internet blow up, because everyone's like, holy Christ, I was ready to get this thing like 5-6 months from now. That time frame is getting shorter. We're at the end of January here, folks. So now it's 5 months, right? Even if they announced it in February, right now it's 5 months, the same amount of time as they launched Fallout 76, right? And if they wait till the end of February, now it's 4 months, because first half of the year is June 30th. That's the end deadline. And they're not launching it in the summer. Summertime is the worst time to launch a video game because kids are on vacation, people are taking time off, people have the kids that play the games get summer jobs. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens during the summertime. That's why companies don't launch in summer. They launch before the summer, right? This is why they do after the summer. They don't do launch in the summer. So there's a lot of little factors here, and I think Starfield is going to be bug and brokey from Bethesda, right? And this is not me shooting them down. I love Bethesda games. I have every single one of them. Okay, I've played every single one. I enjoy it, but it's reality. Starfield's not going to come out and it's not going to be perfect. It's going to have its problems along the way, but it doesn't matter because it's on Game Pass. That's it.
Now, I don't know how much Game Pass is the huge focus anymore, though. They did say in recent documentation that it's only going to end up being about 15% of the revenue generation of the gaming division. They feel like it's plateaued on console. There's room to grow on PC. I think they're going to foster an ecosystem of purchase. They've already done this with Forza, and they're going to be doing it with Redfall. If you buy the deluxe edition, you can play 3 days early. So it's like, yeah, you can play it day and date on Game Pass, but if you pre-order the deluxe edition, you can play it 3 days early. Do you think I had a guy in my chat say, "Oh no, that's bull. That's that if you can play 3 days before me, then I'm not getting to play it day and date." Do you think the optics on day and date's going to shift on them if the future of Xbox is we got to have both Game Pass, but we also have to have people buying our first party games? Do you think that'll cause an optics disruption if they do that with Game Pass as well as those pre-orders and deluxe editions?
I want to put on record that I don't like the Game Pass model. I like what Sony's doing with the first party titles, right? I like that they let the first party titles breathe first, make their money up front, and then they put it on sale, and then it comes to their platform. I agree with that business model. Said it before they even created their business model. I said that's what Game Pass should do. Obviously, I'm a Game Pass person. I have Game Pass. My son's 8 years old. He downloads games and deletes games on the fly, right? That's what it is. It's great for business, but it's terrible for the industry. So Xbox itself, I think, could do the kind of opposite, Lono. I think that they could give benefits to the people on Game Pass because that's the number they're trying to raise, right? They're trying to get more people to get Game Pass. So let's say if you pre-order, you still get it early. Let's say it comes out April 1st. But if you pre-order, it comes out February 25th. But if you're a Game Pass Ultimate member, you get it 2 weeks early, right? I feel like they could push more of that towards Game Pass because that's what they're trying to sell, right? They're trying to shift the industry to where Game Pass is on television sets. There's rumors about this thumbstick that could shove into any any television set. They're talking about it's on mobile with the Project X Cloud and stuff. It's mobile devices, television sets, consoles. They want it everywhere. So I think they might push it where Game Pass is the spot instead of going, hey, if you pre-order is the old days, right? You get the collector's edition, you get the watch, you get the space suit, you get whatever, okay? But if you get Ultimate Game Pass, then you're going to get an advantage of getting it even earlier because it's on Game Pass. I that's what I feel is going to happen.
Yeah, I've wanted them to do the same thing with like demos and trials. Like I love what Sony does. To me, again, it fosters an ecosystem of purchase. It's like, hey, you can try this game out before you buy it. Like being able to play, Horizon Forbidden West for 5 hours before buying it if you are on premium. I'm like, man, that's a killer value. And I kind of think Microsoft's approach is a different way. And I think what you're saying could work, like get people up on Ultimate and then they can play it early as well or whatever. And then anybody who's not on Ultimate can get a discount. Hey, if you pre-order this deluxe edition, you get in 3 days early and hey, we're going to give you a discount. I think fear of missing out, FOMO, I think fear of missing out and a sale, a discount because you're a subscriber, I think both of those things could really, really help that ecosystem change into an ecosystem of purchase. And, and Prosy is saying, I got a bridge to sell you if you guys think Xbox is in trouble. I don't know where the confidence comes from in Xbox as a platform. Like, that's why we're debating and discussing the future of Xbox. If the Activision Blizzard deal doesn't go through, which there's a chance it doesn't. Like, the more you look at the objections from the regulators overseas as well as here, China hasn't weighed in yet. Amazon and Apple haven't weighed in. Google and Nvidia just weighed in, and they're like, this could be bad for cloud. This could be bad for subscriptions or mobile. You think China's going to be okay with Microsoft suddenly owning a huge chunk of the mobile market? If the ABK deal doesn't go through, that actually could be a bad situation for Microsoft going forward because Xbox almost shuttered. This is their chance. This is their last hurrah in my mind. And if we're now seeing that the rhythm and the contracts are leading to Halo Infinite style games, what do you think happens in 3 to 5 years if that's what we get? If we get a Fable that stumbles out the door like Halo Infinite, if we get a Fallout 5, if we get another Gears game, what about Hellblade 2? There's all these titles that we're hoping are unaffected by what seemingly hurt 343. I don't know. We could see the beginning stages of the Xbox platform completely changing or just switching to a publisher.
I look at it as, it is changing. The landscape of gaming is changing, but I don't like the live service, or I shouldn't say the not live service. the subscription service, right? Because look at what happened to the music industry. Look what happened to the film industry, and now the same thing's happening. Right, I'll bring up Blockbuster for the second time in this. Right, the old days there was a video store that you would go rent your games or movies from, and they would have that would be like the Friday night. They would have brand new movies up on the rack, and there would be like 20, 30 of them because that was the hottest selling movie at the time. And everything else in the store, right? Everything else in the store, there's thousands of movies, but you're running to that one little section to get that brand new movie that comes out, right? And now Netflix came out, and now you're running to the subscription service of Netflix, and you're only looking at the top 10 because there's so many pieces of movies on Netflix that you really don't care, documentaries and stuff, unless someone bored out of their mind clicks on a documentary and then tells your buddy, hey, did you see that documentary? It's on Netflix. You should watch it. You're watching it for Red Notice, or you're watching it for the next Ryan Reynolds movie or the next Adam Sandler movie, whatever, right? You're only worried about the top 10. That's what happens. That's what's going to happen with these Game Pass, or these, I shouldn't say Game Pass. That's what's going to happen with the PlayStation and Game Pass, right? Where you're only going to look at the brand new games coming out. You're only going to look at the Starfield hitting the Game Pass. You're only going to look at the Halo. You're only going to look at Fable. There's indie games there. There's other games there, or old games. Someone said there's a lot of old games that they're not interested in, but there are a lot of old games that people are like, hey, I've never played that before, and that's interesting to them, so they'll go buy it. They just want that platform, man. They just want that platform. Xbox is about that platform. They don't care about the quality of the game, because the quality will be there, good enough. It's not going to be terrible, but it'll be good enough where you play the game, just like someone played Halo and said, it's a great game. Just like when someone plays Starfield, they're going to be like, man, there's so much to do. There's 35, 40 hours of content. There's thousands of planets to go look at, right? And that niche market's going to be fine. There's going to be plenty of people who are just fine with it. I never said Xbox is in trouble. In no way, shape, or form did I say Xbox is in trouble. I just said I disagree with the way the market is and how Game Pass is operating.
Yeah, I've been pretty hard on Game Pass as well, because I do think that what you do is you've created what we call like dollar menu gaming syndrome. It's the idea that, well, why would I pay for games? Like, imagine in 10 years, that's what so many people think. You got 25 million people. They're like, why would I play games? And look at the Xbox Game Pass effect. It has an effect on you. Yeah. I do that now. I'm like, is it on Game Pass?
Game Pass? Yeah, is it on Game Pass?
First thing I ask. Do you have an entire consumer base now conditioned to be like, is there a way for me to not buy this? Like, that's not healthy. And honestly, I don't think that's Microsoft's big plan. I don't. If it's only going to be 15% of their gaming revenue, I think Microsoft's big plan is cloud. I think they want cloud. And this is one of the reasons I think they want King Mobile. They want to get into the mobile market. And this was something I said the other day. A light bulb went off for me as to why Google might be against this acquisition of Activision Blizzard, because if Microsoft suddenly owns King Mobile, they could yank every single King Mobile property out of the Apple Store, out of the Google Play Store, and put it in their own storefront. And it's really easy to see how and why they would do it. They did it for Epic. They got Fortnite back on the Apple devices through the cloud, through the browser. So Microsoft has already proven they have the technical wherewithal and the willingness to help something exist on the Apple ecosystem outside of the store, outside of the reach of Apple's revenue share. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. We make a ton of money on Candy Crush and Call of Duty Mobile. I don't want Microsoft to suddenly own that property. They'll take it out of my storefront. And that's a perfectly good reason for those companies to be against it. What do you think the impact of Microsoft's mobile ownership would do in that situation? Do you think what I'm outlining is a likely outcome, or is like, nah, they're not going to do that?
Well, I looked this up the other day. The Windows phones are like 0.04% of the market. Like they're basically non-existent, right, in the entire market. I don't think that Microsoft likes money, just like other businesses, right? So I don't see them yanking Candy Crush, that's one of the top-selling games every single year on the mobile device, off of the number one selling platform of Google phones, right? I just don't see that happening. But here's an idea for Google. What about if you made a game yourself and put it on your own system, right? You know what I mean? They have tons of money they could develop, but we know they can't because they had a console they just shut down after 3 years of Google Stadia, okay? And they didn't even have a studio to make their own games for their own system. They were reselling other people's games on their system with the worst business model sense in the world. So I think they're shaking a little bit because they're like, they could potentially take off Candy Crush and all the other games off of their phone. But isn't Google or Android phones, can't you use any software that you want on that phone anyway? That's why people right? Isn't that why they like using that phone? Because they don't hold you to what the Apple does. You have to get their app store, you have to get their thing, you have to run their software. Isn't that true? I mean, I don't know. I don't have a Google phone.
But you have to think about this. There's a royalty split with the Google Play Store. There's a royalty split with the Apple Store. Think about what if they did this? They push out an update to Candy Crush and Call of Duty Mobile. They have the devs push out an update. So all purchases in the game shell out to a cloud-based browser where they're no longer buying or doing microtransactions within the Apple Store or within the Google Play Store, cutting out the royalty split with them. Like Microsoft just did that for Fortnite. So if I'm Apple, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. We stand to lose millions here, maybe even billions, if suddenly Microsoft owns King Mobile. So that's why I think whenever Phil Spencer did that interview and he said, well, our real competition is Amazon and Google, I think he looked at the future and thought, no, Microsoft as a company isn't really concerned with Sony. Microsoft is concerned with the other companies that are trying to cut in the cloud and trying to cut in the mobile.
Yeah, because that's the future. Yeah.
And if this deal doesn't go through, what do you think of this theory? Creature said these companies are going to keep coming out against the deal. They're going to do it rhythmically. Apple's going to weigh in eventually and be against the deal. And if they shut the deal down, they all get to buy up pieces of Activision Blizzard for themselves. It'll be like a fire sale. It's like, well, Activision Blizzard's, going to need to just start selling off their property and their companies. I mean, is that a distinct possibility here? Or if the deal doesn't go through, Activision Blizzard, just continues to operate on their own?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I don't see that happening as a fire sale because what a contradicted it would be if Sony was like, we don't want Microsoft to get Call of Duty because it would just shift the thing. But then they'll be like, oh yeah, we're going to bid on just Activision to get Call of Duty, right? Then the EU would be like, hold up, wait a minute. You just said that whoever owns this is going to be unfair advantage and now you're going to get it, right? So whoever buys it is going to be the same exact scenario, right? So I think the real problem here is, great, they stopped Microsoft, but who's to say that Tencent doesn't come in and pick up Activision Blizzard? Or who says NetEase doesn't come in and pick up Activision Blizzard, right? So I don't know. Who's to say that Amazon, Bezos is like, oh, you know what? We got a lot of money, so we'll just pick it up. They think it's an unfair advantage because Xbox all of a sudden is paying their way to become number one in the industry, but Google could do it. Tencent can do it. NetEase could do it, right? Amazon could do it. So what's the difference? So is nobody allowed to buy these companies? Is nobody allowed to purchase any of these companies because they're the big 34% of the industry? I don't know. I don't see it as a fire sale. If anything, they just don't get sold and they just go back to being Activision Blizzard and maybe Bobby Kotick retires and someone else takes over the company.
Yeah. I think that right now we're going to see, I think, a shift in Microsoft's approach to gaming. My own prediction is if I'm Phil Spencer, I'm going to Microsoft and saying, listen, Wheezy said this earlier, we've said this many times, that their corporate policies work fine for software, but not for a creative process. And if I'm Phil Spencer, I'm on my knees begging them, listen, you have to let us change some of this stuff. We've got to let contractors stay on beyond 18 months. We've got to be able, okay, we're going to pay them benefits. Fine. That costs us more now, but if we end up with a better product, it's worth it. It's an investment in the project. Like, it's an investment in these studios. Like, I even said the other day, and that's why I got pretty fired up in my show open for this the other day. I was like, Microsoft, why don't you invest in your existing property and your existing studios? You're trying to buy Activision Blizzard. Look what you did to Halo. Look what you did to your boy. Invest in 343 or invest in a studio and empower them to be successful instead of just crapping out a minimum viable product. There's no way If I'm a corporate bigwig and I'm looking at this situation, I'm saying this isn't working. This isn't working. We're just shipping bad games, or not even really shipping games. We just keep delaying them. But we're not going to make our money back if we keep doing this. This guy says, bro, blaming contractors is totally dumb. Tell that to all the former 343 employees that said that incompetent leadership at 343 and the Microsoft contract policy are the two leading reasons that game turned out the way that it did. Tell them that we shouldn't blame the contract policy, and you're going to look silly.
Right.
I mean,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think there's a possibility we see a change here?
I mean, I do. I mean, look, you see the quality testers unionizing now, right? You see the what happened to Ubisoft, where all of a sudden he said it's your fault that the games are bad, and all of a sudden the agency over in is it France, I believe, they decided they were going to do a half-day strike on the 27th of this month because of what the comments he said, and then all of a sudden he backtracked. So I think a lot of things could happen where a lot of organizations, or they start to make unionized stuff. Now, I don't really agree with unions. I was part of a union. I was part of the local 600 in the movie industry, and I obviously stand with my brothers and sisters when we had to strike. But there's good benefits and there's bad benefits to unions. So we'll see what happens as the industry grows and changes. I do think there needs to be some sort of contract or something in place where the 18 months is just too short of contract, right? They need to make it 3 years, double it, right? Double it, make it 36 months or 32 months, 36 months, something along the lines of that, where at least if a game takes 3 years, 3 to 5 years, potentially you can hire somebody, and if you hire them 6 months in, they could potentially see that game out to launch or whatnot, especially with all these games coming out as live service or games of service, same thing. But on these streaming platforms, they're making these type of games. So yeah, I do. I see them changing the way they're structured, and 18 months is too short, so they might elongate that for longer periods.
Well, and we need to call it what it is. The 18-month contract policy is so they don't have to pay benefits. It's not like some arbitrary number. And this guy's, T-Bone saying, "Oh, I read that Naughty Dog's also doing that." No, they're not. There's nobody else is doing the 18-month contract policy. Anthem had the 18-month contractors, and look how that game turned out. That's false. BioWare did not have an 18-month contract policy in place. That is simply untrue. What happened with Anthem was pre-production and decision-making was so atrocious that actual full production of the game only lasted 18 months. You're misstating.
And they had 7 years. They had 7 years where they tried to figure out what they were doing, and then they made it in 18 months. Yeah.
You're misstating that. You're conflating two things. Like, yes, the line is that Anthem was made in 18 months. It had nothing to do with contract policies, right? Detective Seed says, I researched this. Microsoft is the only one who has the 18-month policy. That's right. Typically, I've spoken to two different individuals who work in the gaming industry, and the contracts are usually for the life of the project.
Yep.
Or if they're limited, it's a limited contract on post-production. Like the QA departments are sometimes contracted for somewhere between 6 and 12 months because you don't need the QA department the entire time you're building the game. Some companies actually use and outsource their QA to other companies. They did this with Cyberpunk. They don't even have their own QA department because that's just so much overhead. It isn't worth it. It's like, well, let's just have somebody else do it because you don't need QA until you're in post-production, until you're ready to start testing and running through, like, hey, play this level over and over again. Is there any problems, right?
People don't know this, but I used to work for EA. I used to work for EA Tiburon. I was a contract worker as a game tester when I was going back to school, and that's all I did. I tested Madden games and all the sports games, and that's what I did. Every day you would come in, and you would just play and try to, bug glitches and run plays over and over to see what would happen. And let me tell you, they don't have that anymore because you look at Madden, it's just absolute trash. It's absolute trash. But yeah, there's no contract workers. You would see a rotation of people come in. Some people would come in for a week because they just hated the job, and other people were under contract, and they'd be there for 6 months, or they'd be there for 12 months, or they'd be there for 18 months.
So you're the reason that Madden's so terrible now. It's your fault.
No. When I tested it, Madden was good. When I tested it.
You should do that. You should do a whole series of like playing through Madden and be like, see guys, like this, I tested this. This is why it's good. Like if they would just hire me, like, hire me back from the time that I did my quality work for them. The Activision Blizzard deal with respect to Game Pass and third party and making assurances with Call of Duty and all of this, I was actually pretty strongly against the deal because I think that level of consolidation is bad for the market. I think we've seen that level of consolidation with cell phone companies, cable television companies, internet providers, and it's never been good for the consumer. It drives price up, there's zero competition, and the infrastructure doesn't get any better because why? Who are they competing with? But I really, really went hard against this deal the other day when I covered this. I said, I don't want Microsoft to suddenly own all those Activision Blizzard studios and do what? Make them do what happened to 343? Like, what's going to happen to Bethesda when they have to start working under this? Oh, yeah, all your contractors can only be 18 months. I mean, look at what they did to 343. So 343, according to Schreier, 50% of the staff was on these contracts, which means half of your staff's walking out the door every year and a half. Yep. And then they did a hiring freeze, which means about half the staff is no longer there. And at their peak, they had 450 employees, according to what I read. So that means they roughly lost 200 some odd people. And then they lay off 60-something people. Well, what if you do that to all the studios under Activision Blizzard? What if you treat them all that way? You suddenly start heavily leaning on contractors, and they're all walking out the door every 18 months. And then you do hiring freezes because, and think about this. If the game launches poor, they're going to hiring freeze you. But the game launches poor because of the contract reliance and the contract policy. So this is cyclical. You going to do that to Fable? Fable's going to be bad. Do a hiring freeze. You guys sucked it up. Try to fix it. So, which probably leads to crunch culture. Hiring freeze means you're constantly losing people and not regaining people. And here we are again. Like, that's my concern, is this is going to cyclically destroy every franchise, every developer that gets touched by this. It's the Midas touch, except it's not turning anything into gold. It's turning everything into crap.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, I keep saying it. Game Pass, the way the structure is, Game Pass, it doesn't matter if the game comes out and it's the best game in the world or bare minimum. It's all going on the same platform. It's just there as one of many games on a sea of games selling you that pass, right? They don't care. This is why they're just trying to get the number up. They want as many people. Starfield's going to get a lot of people. Trust me, it's going to get a lot of people to get Game Pass. They're going to hit their numbers. It'll probably go past 35 to 40 million subscribers on Game Pass. Okay, and at that point, once they start getting their first party titles in, the people I see you in chat. I'm already on Game Pass, but I see you in chat. There's those of you out there are going to look at it and go, I'm not getting Game Pass. I'm not going to get Game Pass until that one game comes to Game Pass. And then you're going to be like, yeah, I'm getting it. But you won't admit that you got Game Pass. You're like, oh, yeah, I purchased it. Liar. You're going to be playing it on Game Pass, okay? And that's the way it's going to work. Game Pass is going to be the way that people play games, because why would you pay $70 when you can pay $10? Here's someone said it earlier in the chat, and I missed it. Right? When you pay for something, you complete that game for the most part, right? If you start playing it, if you paid $60, $70, $120, you want to play that game, you want to finish that game, and then once you're done with that game, you kind of put it down, okay? But if you're just getting it on Game Pass, if you don't like that game, you're done. You're like, I'm done. You delete it off your hard drive and you go down, you download another game. My son does that right now. We gave him Sonic Frontiers on the Switch, okay, because that's what he wanted. And he played that game until he's blue in the face, okay? We do a game on Game Pass. He plays it for one afternoon and is like, and just deletes it and then downloads another game because there's no connection to it, because you didn't earn the money to buy the game that you wanted. You didn't purchase it. There's no value there. The value is, all of these games, and I can just play whatever I want, whenever I want. And every time a game comes out, you're like, is it on Game Pass? Is it coming to Game Pass? Right now, Monster Hunter Rise. I had no interest in the game. Guess what? It's on Game Pass. Guess what I'm playing? I'm playing Monster Hunter Rise, right? That's what it is.
Well, and I continue to theorize that third parties weren't going to want to be on Game Pass because they're going to be like, well, I don't understand. We need to make money in that first 2 weeks. Like, Microsoft can write a fat check, but it also can really hurt how a game performs because you have an ecosystem of people not buying it, right? So that's why I wonder if there's a better way forward for Game Pass and its relationship to third-party devs. Like, hey, we'll throw you guys on the demo funnel, and people can try out your game if they're a Game Pass subscriber. And then if they like it, they can buy it. And then let's put it on Game Pass in a month or two. And then that way Game Pass is getting a steady stream of games. But if it's a third-party game, it doesn't need to be on there day and date. Like, in my mind, it's like they went so hard on day and date. That's like almost like a snake eating its tail. It's like, well, you've just created like a self-consuming prophecy. It's like, well, everybody's just going to always expect Game Pass to every single time. It's got to be day and date. It's got to be day and date. To the point that I had a guy in my stream saying, "Oh, if somebody gets early access, then I'm not getting day and date anymore." Wait, okay. Well, I mean, that's just early access. They did it with Forza. They're doing it with Redfall. You're not getting day and date anymore? Jiminy Christmas. Like, that can spread that entitled mentality of, listen, man, I'm paying for Game Pass. I better get those games right on the money, right on the date. And then if I'm Microsoft, how do I measure the success of Starfield? How do you measure the commercial success of it?
You don't. If there's 30 million people on Game Pass, potentially you have 30 million people that are going to play Game Pass right off the bat. And then you have people that are going to buy it, right, on PC. And then you're going to have people that buy it on Xbox because they don't have Game Pass. But what is there, 70? No. How many people? Because I forgot that it's also on. Is Starfield on Xbox One, or is it just on the next-gen systems?
Just next-gen systems, okay. Yeah.
So how many systems are out in the world right now?
The total, I don't know. I know Series S is outselling the X because they made more and it was cheaper. Is it above
50 million? Is there 50 million systems out there? I don't know.
No.
Check the facts, chat. Well, how many Xboxes are out in the world?
Roughly 20 million is what chat's saying.
20 million, great. Not all those people have Game Pass, right? Because there's only 30 million people that have Game Pass, right?
Well, the 30 million number was a projection. It's actually, according to Microsoft, it's like 25 still, 25 million.
25, 27 or whatever it is. But that's also counting the Xbox One that people have Game Pass on there as well.
And
right?
PC.
So let's just say 10 million people out of the 20 million people have Game Pass, right? Well, great. That's 10 million people that are going to try it, which that's a successful game, by the way. That's a tremendous game. That's top 10 from last year. Call of Duty, Elden Ring, Lego Star Wars, they all had more than 10 million sales in video games last year, okay? Pokemon, Scarlet Violet, whatever, also had 10 million in 3 days. So if 10 million people have Game Pass on the new systems, potentially that's how many people could try and potentially pay for or play Starfield. So that's 10 million including. And then you're going to have a 2 million, I would say about 2 million, 3 million people that will buy it on top of that, right? The other 10 million people that didn't have Game Pass, they'll probably buy Starfield. So I don't think you'll see the sales numbers because obviously, unless it's outrageous, they're not going to tell you. Like Cyberpunk, they made all their money back on pre-sales, and then they sold another 5 million after the game came out. They sold like 12 or 13 million total, and they told you that out loud. They're like, "Hey, we made all our money back in the product." Unless Microsoft does that type of numbers, they're not going to tell you anything. They're just going to be like, "Oh, they're going to tell you how many people are playing, or how many people logged in, or how many hours were played, or something along those lines," because that's the marketing material now.
Yeah, and Starfield will also be on PC Game Pass, and to me, that is the ultimate question. Are we going to run into that Netflix effect where Netflix will be like, "Hey, we've got this great new show," and everybody subscribes to watch the show, and then season 2 comes out and it doesn't impact subscriber numbers, and so it's like, well, we can't measure the impact of this show anymore, cancel it. And that would be the concern, right? It's like, well, are you going to launch games to generate those subscriptions, and then what happens to future content plans? What happens to sequels? Like, do you say, well, we can't measure the impact, so you've got to do a new IP? Like, what's Microsoft's philosophy going to be for ongoing content models for games, for DLCs, expansions, for sequels? Are they going to say, well, it's not going to impact it's not going to impact our subscription numbers, so you need to do something else. You need to... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you need to move to a new IP, or we're going to shut you down. I mean, they could just start shuttering studios and be like, well, you did your job. You cranked out a game. It impacted our subscription funnel for Game Pass, and now we don't need you anymore.
Well, Starfield's a weird beast because it wasn't created by Microsoft. They bought the company, and then they're putting it on Game Pass, right? Like, all their first-party titles like Forza, Halo, Sea of Thieves, Minecraft, all of them have the model of where, like, you could buy Minecraft Dungeons or you could play Game Pass Minecraft Dungeons, and then the DLC you have to pay. If you want to pay for the DLC, you have to pay the DLC. Forza is on Game Pass, but then they have the season pass, they have the different cars, they have a marketplace in there. Sea of Thieves is the same thing. It's free. You could pay $40 for the game when it came out, or you could just play it on Game Pass, and then you pay for the cosmetics and whatnot, and that's how that stays. So it all depends on what it is. Starfield, we don't know what that is. We don't know if there's a DLC down the line, right? We don't even know when the game's coming out yet. So we don't know what their structure is. Is it going to be a marketplace down the road? Like, is the game going to come out and be a single-player game? That's it right off the bat, and then all of a sudden they add DLC that you're paying for on Game Pass? Or are they going to be selling a marketplace where you have different ships that look different, but like you have the ship in the game, but you can put a skin on it, right? Are they going to sell the skin of a new ship? We don't know the business model yet of Starfield. So that's why Starfield's a little weird, because they were bought and then put into the market instead of being built from the ground up.
Well, and people in chat are saying engagement is the metric, but what does engagement do? Like, what does engagement do?
Hit that like button.
Like, Netflix had engagement. People watched their TV shows. That didn't put money in the coffers. That was not a return of investment. Like, that doesn't work. That would be like me saying, "Oh, I'm getting engagement as a live streamer." Let's say all of a sudden my viewership doubled because I started doing some sequence. I started investing in some show that I was doing, right? I'm spending tons of money investing in some live show here on YouTube, and it doubles my viewership, 1,000 viewers. But my audience rejects it largely, and my paying membership plummets. Well, that engagement isn't going to make up for the fact that I'm losing money. I'm spending more than I'm getting. Like, that's my question. Like, the business philosophy and business strategy here for Microsoft going forward, what do you do with your property if you keep putting it on an ecosystem of 25 million and growing? 25 million to 30 million people don't have to buy this game. We're measuring the engagement. Then what are you doing with it? What does that communicate something like, oh, people are going to stay on Game Pass because they're engaging with the games?
Well, someone asked in chat earlier, so I pay $180 and that's it for, what do I play? Personally, I play a couple games, but my 8-year-old plays pretty much everything. He just goes down the list, downloads a game, and plays it. So that $180 to have my son play that model, he have fun. Because if I went out every time he liked a game and bought it, I would be broke, right? I would be $60 every time he wanted a game. And I can't afford that, right? So the model of Game Pass in the future, I don't know how they do that. I read an article about smaller independent developers. They're worried. They said the culture of the people that used to buy games are now basically buying a service. And unless you're an independent developer right off the bat of a brand new system, you get saturated, and your games don't get shown as much because it gets buried. And as the Fiji is the name of the production company or the publisher. They make like Tunic. They put Tunic out there and everything, right? So there's outliers like an Ori, like a Tunic, like a Hades, where those independent developers they're well and they make their money. But for the most part, independent developers on Game Pass, they get saturated. So if they don't get their game out when the systems come out right away, they get lost in the mix. And the only way they make profit now is that they sell their game to the service. So it would be on PlayStation, and let's say they thought they were going to sell 100,000 copies. They go, okay, we'll give you the money for the 100,000 copies, or they'll give them a little bit more, so they made their money back, right? Or they could take the risk of putting it out there, not getting any money, but if there's no monetization in that game, then that's it. You're selling them a game on Game Pass, but no one's buying it. They're just They're just playing it on Game Pass. So independent developers are worried right now that the way the service is, and we talked about it, how people just, is it on Game Pass? Is it on Game Pass? We're changing the culture of what it is. What have you done for me lately? What game are you putting on Game Pass that I'm paying $10 a month for,
Right.
or $15 a month for, that's going to be good enough for me to play? So same thing goes with the big companies, right? So I like someone said that they're paying for Starfield because they're paying for the developers. I'm sorry. Do you think that Bethesda's not part of Microsoft? Because you paid to Bethesda. Bethesda now hands the check over to Daddy, and Daddy's like, "Thank you very much for your percentage, and we'll let you keep operating here, and you still have your jobs," because that's how it works. They're not a separate company. They're underneath the umbrella of Microsoft. So you paying for the game or you paying for Game Pass is still going to the devs based on your engagement. Because if Game Pass, if one person's paying $10 or $15 a month and they're only playing Starfield, that person's percentage is going towards Starfield then, right? They're paying that money and they're like, oh, this user paid $10 and the majority of that money is yours because that's what they paid. That's how it works, right? So you saying you're going to buy Starfield or you're going to rent Starfield, doesn't matter. It's all going to the same pocket of big bad Bill Gates. You know what I mean? That's going to his pocket. So I don't think the Game Pass model moving forward, they have to be monetized in some way, shape, or form. If it's not if there's no marketplace, there's DLC. If there's no DLC, then there's a marketplace.
Yeah, the Claymores is this username, and they're kind of agreeing with what you said. They said engagement is a profit metric for live service games for microtransactions. You know, you get more engagement, you get a higher percentage of microtransactions. He said it doesn't work as a profit metric for subscription services like Game Pass. That's exactly right, because without what Mike just said, without microtransactions, without monetization, then what are you going to get? Because I told people that I predicted, and this hasn't come true yet, so this, I may be wrong, but I thought you're going to get a lot of monetized games on Game Pass in the future because they're going to start to say, this is the best fit. This is the best fit. You fill the funnel with players. Game Pass is amazing for that. It's an amazing value. Like you said, your kid's just, game after game after game. He's just jumping in. Well, that's perfect for a game that's heavily monetized. You get them in, you hook them, and they're like, this is great. And all evidence points to people spending more in microtransactions when the game is free. If you saw those pie charts, they showed that one time in a presentation about mobile games that were $1 versus mobile games that were free. The micro spending was astronomically different. It's $1 for the game, and yet they spent that $1. They expect to spend way less in the game. So Game Pass can foster that with monetized games. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get bad monetization, but it certainly means that's the best fit. And so if I was Microsoft, that's what I would be considering. Sony buys Bungie and wants to have 12 live service games before 2026, right? If I'm Microsoft, that's what I'd be on the hunt for. Right. Let's get some live service games for Game Pass. That's where the money is, because you're going to have people thinking, oh, I'm getting a great deal here. Well, yeah, really? I mean, a lot of these live service games probably would have been free anyway, but then Microsoft can pad the value of Game Pass and say, boom, day and date, play this game, and it's an ongoing game, microstore, cosmetics, battle pass. That's where the money is. And if I'm a Game Pass holder, and I am, I'm not really against that. I'm not. But if I'm a Microsoft business strategist, that's what I'd be setting my sights on. Big, huge titles like Starfield with humongous budgets, if you don't have any ongoing monetization, what on earth? How does that get you ROI? That just seems incredibly expensive.
This is why I think Starfield down the road, obviously they haven't said anything yet, but I do believe after year one, they'll input something that makes it like co-op or multiplayer modes or something. I can't imagine having a game like Skyrim's tremendous, right? Skyrim's tremendous. The world's tremendous when you play that game. Now you're taking Starfield and there's 1,000 planets. Now we all know when we played No Man's Sky, most of those planets that you went to, there's what was there, 8 trillion planets or something, right? It would take you a lifetime to go to every single planet. Most of those planets were just desolate, and they were just procedurally generated. It was boring, right? So obviously Starfield is not No Man's Sky because Starfield has story, in-depth story, RPG mechanics and whatnot. But once you're done with that 35, 40-hour story and you start exploring, it's going to be boring and lonely, right? And someone says, why would someone play for a single-player game on Game Pass? people pay for a lot of things for no reason, right? They forget they rented it or they buy Game Pass for a month and then they forget to cancel, and then all of a sudden. But most people will try a different game. I think the stat is like 60% of people on Game Pass try different games because they pay for Game Pass. They wouldn't try. So, but Starfield to me feels weird because we don't know. And maybe they did delay it. Maybe they had a reason they delayed it from November to earlier because they're still working on something after the fact that's something co-op or a different game mode, something to have that interaction. Because once you're done with the single player story, I know there's people that are diehard Bethesda fans. They'll go in with a different build, no gun build, a melee build, whatever build. They'll do it through Starfield, just like they did with Skyrim, just like they did with Fallout. But the majority of the population, what's bringing them back? If it's an empty planet, they're going to get bored and they're just going to stop playing, right? So there's got to be that. An empty planet by yourself is boring. An empty planet with your friend is fun, right? So I feel like they're going to add something down the line to make it multiplayer.
Well, and Robert Jones says, I don't think every Game Pass game has to turn a profit. Some of them are just made to keep users subscribed. Yeah, and if the games that are designed to do that are the most expensive games, that's a Netflix bubble burst if I've ever seen one. Like, you're just going to keep shoveling money at enormous titles. That bubble will burst. If the biggest budget titles are designed to do that, that's a lot of that's very expensive, right? And that's why I'm saying, like, you gotta have some monetization on there. And we are 5 days away from the Xbox showcase, so we know you got Redfall, Minecraft Legends, Forza Motorsport, and I'm forgetting one of the other titles that'll be there. Oh, ESO will be there. Do you have any predictions about that showcase, Mike? There's people that are like, well, they're going to announce the Starfield showcase at the end to get people to watch it. I think Minecraft Legends actually has a ton of potential. It looks really, really cool. And then obviously Forza Motorsport, I think, will be a top-tier game. I think it'll be a good game. And then Redfall, right? Any predictions on when these games land, how they land, and what do we see in this showcase that's landing? I mean, again, the Xbox showcase is 5 days from now. We will be covering it. Not necessarily Mike and myself, but we'll cover it on this channel. I'm sure Mike will cover it as well. What do you think? What do you think we see?
I mean, obviously we see Redfall and we'll get the actual date because rumors is like May 2nd or whatever it is. So we'll see more gameplay and I think we'll get more of what that game is, right? Because right now, even though they came out and said like it's like Far Cry, I still don't think it's like Far Cry. I still think it's more like Back 4 Blood, but just open world map, like bigger maps, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll see more of the, as I call the meat and potatoes of what that game is because we really don't know a lot about that game. Minecraft Legends is another game I'm interested in. Just because I love the franchise of Minecraft and I really like what they did with Minecraft Dungeons. So I'm interested to see what they do with this real-time strategy, their take on this. The Forza Motorsports, I'm not a big fan. I like the Forza Horizon, and I'll be honest, the only reason I play it, guess what? It's on Game Pass. So I'll probably play this when it's on when it comes out because nothing out of my pocket. And then I think we see that unannounced title that what's it called? The ESO staff. I forget their name.
ZeniMax?
ZeniMax. They've been working on some IP for 5 years that they haven't announced yet. So I'm interested to see if they show that at the that's the big thing I'm waiting for.
Yeah, I was hoping that Rare would be there with Everwild, but the creative director apparently just left. So I'm like, oh, here we go again. Like, is this another title that's in trouble? Because I actually like Rare, and I like what they've done with Sea of Thieves. I wish they did more with it. I was just saying the other day, I readjusted my position and said, hey, make the PvE better, and I don't care about the threat of PvP anymore. I think the threat of PvP is what makes that game feel good to be in it.
Right.
But they just did an update recently, and not surprising, the community turned it into a grief central, and they're having to do an update to put a stop to it. It's like, well, that's the bed that you made. That's the community that's still playing. It's just a bunch of griefers. As far as the showcase goes, I think we're definitely getting a Redfall date. We're going to get a hard date for Redfall. Yep. Sven is saying Avowed. No, Avowed won't be there. Hellblade 2 will not be there. If we see anything from Hellblade 2 and Avowed, it'll be at the Xbox Bethesda showcase in the summer. This is all about, in my mind, this showcase is about the first 6 months of this year. Like, what is coming?
Or, yeah, I would say 6 months. I would say the whole year. I would say what's coming out the whole year.
But everything they've listed that's at this showcase was at the Xbox Bethesda showcase last year, which meant it has to come out within the first 6 months of this year because
that's true.
That's what they said. That's what I think it's for. I think this is basically they'll start kicking off every year with the January showcase. It'll basically be like, this is the first 6 months. And then they'll use the Xbox Bethesda showcase in the summer to be like, here's the rest of the year and next year. Like, they're always going to do that. Like, basically, I feel like every 6 months we're going to hear from Microsoft. They're going to do some kind of a showcase. January, June will be the rhythm. And that leaves a lot of questions about the Starfield showcase. Where do you think this is landing? When are we going to get this showcase?
I said this briefly earlier. I think the game gets pushed back into the second half of the year. I don't know why. I feel like they need more time. But if it comes out early, it doesn't matter. Guess why, chat? Guess why it doesn't matter? It's on Game Pass, right? So I do think that they're going to come out with it in February. It will be the showcase in February.
Okay.
That'll give them two reasons here. I think that if Todd Howard's a crazy man, which I think he is, and he does decide to just drop it on us, I think the hype meter goes up like dramatically, where he says I think it'll be like mid-February, right? So I'm going to think, well, you know what? Let me look at a calendar real fast. Let me quickly look at a calendar. I think the showcase on the 25th. So I'll say February 22nd, which is the last week, the last Wednesday of February, right? So they'll do the show at the end of February because they love doing stuff at the end of the month, okay? And then at the end of that showcase, there's maybe a chance he goes and it comes out March, whatever, which is in a couple weeks, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? And that would just drop. Everyone would be like, "Oh my God, Starfield's coming out," and people would be like ecstatic about it. But at the same time, I think they show stuff and they don't give us a date, and they just kind of drag it along because I don't see them. If it's not ready, they have 4 months, right? They have 4 months after that showing in February to drop it. And in my mind, they don't drop it in June because they're not going to drop it in the summer. And May is Redfall, and I don't think you drop it near Redfall too close.
Right.
So that means April, right? You get it out before Redfall. It leapfrog Redfall. So obviously, I think it gets pushed out of the first half of the year, and I want to say October, November is when I think it actually comes out.
Mm-hmm. So there's no way they do the showcase without a release date. I don't think that would be a very bad idea. So I think the showcase comes with a release date no matter what. I think it will be raw, uncut gameplay. Somebody holding a controller and playing, right?
On stage, yeah.
On stage. This will likely spin up the is it 30 FPS or not. I'm absolutely ready to get out the bat if this game is capped at 30 FPS on the Series X. That's a joke. Even pro Xbox guys are saying that. They're like, you better frickin' not do that. So I think it'll be raw, uncut gameplay, a guy with a controller actually playing, Todd, maybe somebody else, he'll be sitting there talking, obviously. They will have Todd there in an amazing leather jacket. And I think June is a extremely unlikely date because you have Final Fantasy 16 and Diablo, and you have all the marketing. You have Summer Game Fest. You have more than likely E3. You have the Xbox Bethesda showcase. That month is all about marketing. I don't think they're going to try to release then. I think this hits October. 10/10/23 is my prediction. I think 10/10 sounds nice. Then it doesn't matter what part of the world you're from. That date's now universal, and that's a nice Tuesday. I think that works. I think they like to do that with the date, and if they did 9/9 or 11/11, that has it landing on like a Saturday. So I think 10.
Yeah, it's a 7.
Yeah, 10/10/23 just looks nice. It looks like it's like at that binary look, 0.
What about
1 0.
what about 12/12? 12/12's a Tuesday. 12/12/23.
Yeah, 12/12/23 is another potential. I could see that too because you get the holiday sales. You land just in time for Game Award. No, you got to land first half of November for Game Award nominations. I don't know if they would want to basically kick it outside that window, but it might be good to kick it outside that window. This is a stout year for game releases because you have Spider-Man 2, you have Diablo, you have Final Fantasy 16, you have Hogwarts. Yeah. It's a very full year. Big titles. Jedi Survivor. A lot of big names are going to be in contention for Game of the Year, and they may really like that. Now, there's this continued rumor about, it's coming in March 23, 23, which is not how they like to choose dates. That would be confusing. And they're going to have a Super Bowl commercial. Do you think this has even a shred of merit that we see a Starfield Super Bowl commercial and a March release date? Because you just said they could drop the bomb, be like, yeah, man, February, showcase, and it's coming next month. Like, what's the likelihood on that one? Give it a number.
What about if the Super Bowl commercial is just a commercial for the showcase?
Oh my gosh, I don't see that.
And not the actual date. No, I can see it happening. I can see it happening at the Super Bowl, like advertise when the date comes out. But that means the Super Bowl, isn't it on like the second week of February? Sports ball. I forget what it is. It's
I'm running
February. I think it's
February the 12th. February
12th.
The 12th. 2 days after Hogwarts.
Yeah. So it could be. It could be they have a commercial and tell you, but that means does the showcase come before the Super Bowl, which means it's like a week after the other developer thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's too close, isn't it? Like, they're not going to have a live event at the end of January, and then a week and a half later, they're going to show you the trailer and then have a commercial at the Super Bowl and then tell you when the delete. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Are they announcing the date at the event, or are they announcing the date at the Super Bowl? You see what I'm saying?
That would be, see, I think you just did a really great job of shooting down that theory that we're getting a Super Bowl commercial with the date and a March date, because that would be, so what are you gonna blow your wad at the Super Bowl and then do what? Do a showcase to show off gameplay? You want people to be in hot anticipation for that date, and you're going to give them the date at the showcase. I actually think you just did a great job shooting that rumor down. I do think the guy who originated with the rumor said it's more likely going to be an Xbox commercial, and maybe it does include at the end, like, here's everything coming this year, and we have a showcase for one of our biggest titles.
It's not an Xbox commercial. It's a Game Pass commercial.
There you go. Yeah. I've got a good feeling about Starfield. I do. I look at this game and I think this is going to be a great game. I do. I think it's going to be one of those experiences that isn't really matched right now, right? Everybody's going to say, this is what... I guarantee you there'll be people that will say this. This is what I wanted from No Man's Sky. Because No Man's Sky is delivering excellence, but it's not delivering space RPG. It's delivering space exploration simulator. It's very different, as well as survival elements. I do. I think there are going to be people that say that. It's going to give that... I want to be Captain Picard. I want to have that Star Trek fantasy of making my ship bigger and better and have a staff and have, and adding different equipment to the ship. I think this will be a good game, maybe a great game, but the concern is launch timing, because I do think there is that potential theory is still lingering. It got shoved out of this year. Do you think there's a possibility of that?
I don't think it's shoved out this year. And the only reason I say that is because Game Pass. I think they need titles to come out this year for Game Pass, for Microsoft. So if it's ready or not, it goes back to my conversation earlier. Even if it's not ready, they're going to put it on Game Pass this year. They got to get it out on Game Pass this year. The Redfall, Starfield. What? There's another game coming out there. Well, actually, a bunch of them if they do Minecraft Legends, right? So there's going to be at least 5 to 6 first-party title games coming out this year, supposedly, right? So they need it to happen.
Yeah, Lies of P just got added to, I believe, the Sony store with its placeholder, and it is saying 2023, and I believe Lies of P has been billed as a Game Pass game as well. That game actually, we looked at some numbers, people that play tested it, and people who are not fans of FromSoft games and have not played FromSoft games actually enjoyed Lies of P, which is interesting to me because it looks like that game's going to kick the living crap out of you. As far as this year goes, yeah, we've obviously been discussing the future of Xbox, and we really appreciate all the chat engagement, guys. Thanks so much. Make sure you're smashing like. Continue to put your comments in chat. I'd love to hear from chat on this one too. What's the game this year that it's a must play? It's the biggest one for you. What's the biggest title?
Oh, see, someone asked me this last night on our podcast. They're like, what's that one game that you would play this year? Like, if you only could pick one game this year, what are you going to play? And it's tough, man. This first 2 months of the year, we have Hogwarts and we have Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I really love Fallen Order when it came out. But if I have the restraints, you did give me restraints, but if I only have one game to play this year, I'm not picking Star Wars Jedi Survivor because once I beat that game, I'm putting it down. So I think it would be Hogwarts, because Hogwarts seems like a game that you could put hundreds of hours in based on the different houses and the way the different paths you can take, and then also just how large it is, right? So I'm cheating here. It would be Jedi Survivor is my most excited game because I'm a Star Wars fan. But if I only could pick one because I had to play it all year, I would pick Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah, I think it's tough for me because as a content creator, I'm looking at Diablo 4 and thinking, man, I can do a lot with that. I can play that with my wife. We loved playing Diablo 3 together. So I almost have to pick Diablo 4. But then, yeah, I look at Jedi Survivor. And I mean, I just did a video the other day, like, I want it to be more like Sekiro, like really tighten up the combat. They've got the 5 stances. I just went back into Ghost of Tsushima last night. I love that, like being able to change stances and have that affect combat. And, you know, a lot of people in chat are saying Hogwarts. I saw a lot of Hogwarts.
Real quick, I want to comment on Creature's thing. I don't know if Transformers is coming out this year. There's no date for that game, but if Transformers is coming out this year and we get a date this year, if the beta comes out, I'm playing Transformers, like, hands down. But we don't have an actual date, so I can't say Transformers at all.
Yeah, I'm the same. Because we have a couple of games that we don't even know if they're coming this year. Because someone's like, I can't believe you didn't pick Hellblade 2, and I'm like, we have rumors about Hellblade 2.
Do you know something I don't? Like, do we have a date that we don't know about?
Well, there's no way Hellblade 2 is coming this year. I mean, this is under the subject of the future of Xbox. According to the developers themselves, it wasn't even in full production in 2021. In the middle of 2021, it hadn't entered full production yet. There's no way they built Hellblade 2 in 2 years. There's just no way. I mean,
right.
They're not that big, and it's if you saw the initial gameplay reveal, that's an ambitious title, man. They're doing awesome stuff with that game.
Do they use Unreal Engine 5, don't they?
Yeah, UE5.
Yeah, I don't know. It potentially 2 years it could work for that, because the system's meant for stuff like that, right? They can use assets again, and they can bring stuff over. So potentially they could bring it out early. Well, not early. Within 2 years. I
don't want them to. They were taking their time with, like, recording different sound effects and stuff and traveling to different sites. I can't see that. If they're taking that level of care and artistry, I can't see 2 years. Because we don't even know. I'm saying 2 years. If they were not in full production in the middle of 2021, we don't know when it entered full production. It could have not entered full production for another 6 months after that, which means, what, you think they built it in a year and a half? I just don't think so.
Chat, the only reason I didn't pick Spider-Man 2 is I don't own a PlayStation 5. So that's a no bueno for me, because I don't own a PlayStation 5. So Spider-Man, even though I love this is the year that if you're a nerd, okay, you got Harry Potter franchise, basically. You got Hogwarts, you got Star Wars, you got Avatar, you got Spider-Man, you got Marvel, right? You got potentially Transformers. There's a lot of IP brands if you were a kid in the 80s and 90s, man. It's booming.
Yeah. What do you think of Tears of the Kingdom, the Zelda game? Did you play Breath of the Wild?
I did. Here's the funny part. We got a Switch like 2 years ago, and my wife makes fun of me. She's like, "You just wanted the Switch for your son so you could play Zelda." And I was like, damn right. Right. So I started playing it, but I never finished. I was doing crazy hours, like late night streams and whatnot, and taking care of my son during the day, and like, 'cause I'm a stay-at-home dad. So I was exhausted, and every time I would sit down and play, I would fall asleep because it's the music is so tranquil. And as I'm going through, and I was like, I never finished. I never finished. I never went back to finish. But me playing it, I loved it. But because I haven't finished the first one, I'm not picking up the second one until I finish the first one.
That's good policy. I would recommend finishing it. It's amazing. The final fight is it's pretty epic. It's very, very well done. Apparently, this is way off topic, but we've the future of Xbox debate. Feel free, chat, weigh in on anything we talked about. Like, I want to know when you think Starfield's coming, who ends up building the next Halo, because it ain't going to be 343. Let us know in chat what you think. But we're shifting a little bit here just to kind of talk about the rest of the year. Apparently, the next Zelda, Breath of the Wild 2, Tears of the Kingdom, is the last big mainline first-party title for the Switch. We're going to get an announcement this summer about the next Switch, which will be landing holiday next year, 2024.
Okay.
I'm seeing this, whispers. Is that? Are you like, well, I'm going to wait then? Because I kind of feel that. I'm like, my gosh, I want to wait. The performance, the 30 frames per second, it was a big deterrent for me. I loved Breath of the Wild, but I haven't gone back to do a new or a fresh playthrough because of that. Like, it kind of hurts to play it. It's like, oh, golly, it's bad.
Well, is it going to be a handheld again? Is it going to be where it's handheld 30 frames and then you shove it into that cradle and it's like 60 frames? Like, are they making it, you know what I mean? Like, are they doing something? Because it's got to be pretty beefy. Is it going to compete with like the Steam Deck? Is it going to compete? You know what I mean? Like, where are we going with this? Like, what type of system are we talking about?
Wheezy's really plugged in, and he says there's a distinct possibility that this thing will be capable of 4K 60 and it'll be incredibly strong. There's some new technology that they're going to be harnessing that will put this thing into a very, very special category. And we're not going to see that on the PlayStation and the Xbox because they can't tap into the DLSS. They can't tap into it because they're not on NVIDIA chipset. So it's apparently going to be they're going to be doing some NVIDIA, and that taps them into DLSS, which is continuing to show itself to be a formidable piece of technology. So that would be insane to me if we end up with Nintendo leading the charge into next gen and sort of, beating the brakes off of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and be like, well, we actually have a 4K 60 machine, and imagine playing, games like Zelda and Mario.
Right.
I wonder what that would do to the dialogue because, we're going to get a mid-gen upgrade for the Xbox and the PlayStation at some point.
I always call Nintendo crazy Uncle Nintendo because when the industry goes left, they go right. Always. When everyone went to cartridges, they went to small mini DVDs, right? Like the small discs. And then everyone went to digital, and they have little cartridges that you shove into your Switch, right? They always go the opposite way. Everyone made a console, they made a handheld. What about if Nintendo comes out with this 4K thing? It's like a VR headset that's you sit on the console is just the helmet, and it's like you don't ever. I don't know. They always do some crazy stuff. That'd be interesting, man, if they do the 4K stuff and all of a sudden they leapfrog ahead of PlayStation because Nintendo quietly is outselling Xbox and PlayStation. Right?
Yeah.
Right? No one talks about that. Everyone's like, it's a battle between PlayStation and Xbox, and it's like,
no.
Nintendo's like, hey guys, we're over here. Nintendo doesn't have a problem with Xbox buying Activision. You know what I mean?
Some guy said that the other day, like, Nintendo's, fell off, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I think they're on pace to be the greatest selling console in history, like the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
Wheezy is saying, though, that it's not going to be more powerful than the Series X and PS5, according to what he's looked at, but it will be a huge leap over the Switch, like 2-generation jumps. It would be significantly different. Now, chat started weighing in, and some people are saying that, they'd love to see Halo taken over by ID Software, the Doom guys. I can't call them id. They were always ID Software growing up. And Sven is asking you, he's like, all right, Mike, if you could pick one dev to take over making mainline Halo, who would it be and why?
One mainline dev. I'm drawing a blank right now. The first one that popped in my head was a Treyarch or Sledgehammer, but that's because I'm leaning towards them buying Activision.
Right.
I don't know, man. Like, yeah, I'm not even going to try to dig for another one. I think Treyarch would be the one. Respawn, I don't see Krebsy because they're just so busy doing other things with the Battlefield series and also with Apex and then also with potentially the next trilogy of the Star Wars game.
Yeah. Well, the question is, who would you pick? Like, if you could just wave a wand and pick somebody, that not who do you think takes it, but who would you pick?
I would pick. Well, I would like to see. Obviously, it's Sony, and it's not going to happen. But Insomniac make some fantastic single player games, right? And they would. I think they would knock it out of the freaking park, man. If they got their hands on that Halo, Insomniac games would just blow the doors off of it. You would just absolutely love Master Chief again. That's who I would pick. Obviously, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, you look what they did with Spider-Man and what they're doing with Ratchet and Clank. That I could see that. I actually think I would pick id Software. I'd pick ID. I think because if they can bring to Halo what they brought to Doom, the tight arena, they've got the tight arena shooter back history. Because what they did with Doom is phenomenal. I mean, it's so. You talk about being faithful to your roots. Those guys have been faithful to their roots, and I think they could do that. They could create an amazing arena shooter feel without it suddenly feeling like, well, it's not Halo. I think that's always going to be the challenge, is it needs to feel like Halo, and Halo's just kind of slow. It just is kind of like archaic by nature. And I wonder if somebody like id or even Insomniac could do a good job if they're sort of hamstrung by that format, by that, it's got to be more slow and plotting, and you got to have the shield mechanic. Like, I think that would be the biggest challenge.
Real quick, Corey Massey, I picked Insomniac not because it's Sony. I don't want Sony to make Halo. It's like fantasy football. You're asking me who would be a good developer to make Halo. Insomniac to me would be that developer, right? So if you're putting parameters where I can't pick anybody, but I only can pick people that are not part of a certain company, well then I would go back to Treyarch then. I mean, I don't know what you want for me to say.
Yeah, Jiminy Christmas. Like, it's just a hypothetical. If you could pick any developer, he's not like, I think Sony can save Halo. My gosh, not everything is a console war. Mike on the mic with a $10 super chat tip says, yo, what's up, Lono and Mike? If the ABK acquisition doesn't go through, what the F is Xbox going to do? I'm asking because I feel like they really need this. I don't know. I don't know what they do if the deal doesn't go through. I think they'd make a play for King Mobile. They'd be like, listen, if you're not going to let us have ABK, we want King, because I think that would that'd give them the money they would get through a King acquisition. They've all but said in a couple interviews that's really what they want out of this deal.
Yeah, the mobile.
They want King Mobile.
Yeah, that's exactly what they want. They want to get into the mobile market. I don't know if they can't do this. Obviously, if they're not looking for the mobile market, I think they make a play for Ubisoft, because Ubisoft games fit perfectly on the Game Pass method or model with the microtransactions. They're large games. They're popular games. I know a lot of people don't like them, but think about it. Like Division 2, or the Assassin's Creed series, all the Wildlands, Medal of Honor, all of these games would fit perfect on that subscription service. Now, obviously, they're on the subscription service. There's already Ubisoft games on Game Pass. Someone asked me the other day, do you think EA would get bought out? I said, no, they're sleeping for free with them, right? They're already part of Game Pass, so they don't need to buy them, right? Because they're the only sports out there, and they're already on Game Pass if you have Ultimate, so they don't need to buy them. They're gaining from them regardless. So I see them making a play for Ubisoft if the Activision, and then no one would care because they're like, oh, it's just Ubisoft. Go ahead, you can have them, like type of thing.
Yeah. I don't know, man. That was my lead story this morning, and I was kind of worried that no one was going to care because like Ubi is just, they're in a rough spot, man. CEO is motivating Ubisoft Paris to strike because he just responds with this tone-deaf email. And then they've got big titles coming. Assassin's Creed Mirage. They've got the open world Star Wars game. They have Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora.
Beyond Good and Evil 2 is still in development. It's still out there. Just to let you guys know, it's good.
Yeah. We've been doing all these videos like, is it even real, right? Is Atomic Heart real? Is The Day Before real? Like, Beyond Good and Evil 2, like, is it real? Like, no, yeah, we're still making it. Who? What can you imagine being the developers on that? Like, what does that feel like, I wonder, to be on a project that long? How many times has it been restarted, do you think? Like, at least 3, I think, at this point.
I don't know, man. When they showed it, was it 2016, 2017, and they had Joseph Gordon-Levitt on stage to get people that did the art for the work and the music and all these like independent artists and stuff, and you're like, man, that game looks amazing. You saw the devs where they're leaving the planet, going out into space, and they're on these spaceships, and the detail in the city. You're like, this is amazing, and that was on the last gen system. Yeah, that was on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, and here we are on the Series X, S, and PlayStation 5, and you're like, what happened to that game? Where is it?
I couldn't believe that. I thought people were joking around. I saw thumbnails and titles. It's like it's been 15 years, and then I went and looked, and I was like, 15 years? I was like, what are y'all doing? Because you think about dev cycles being 5 to 6 years. That's why I'm like, this thing has been restarted at least 3 times. It has to have been. Like, what have you been doing? Anything you built for the old systems is scrapped by now. You ain't selling.
It's obsolete.
Yeah, you're not selling on that. Like, by the time this thing comes to market, I guess it's going to launch on the PS7. When we finally see it.
Yeah, no, it'll be exclusive for Sony. That's what it'll be. It'll be exclusive for Sony.
Oh my gosh. Do you think Starfield comes to Sony? I think it does. I think a year later.
I do. Yeah, for sure. I think it comes out about a year, maybe 2 years later. It's definitely. Why not? Do you know what I mean? Like, why would you stop it from coming? You want it on your system first, obviously, because you want people to buy your system or get your service. But why wouldn't you just throw it onto the other systems after the fact?
I just had a crazy idea. This is a far reach prediction. This is thin. I this is unlikely, but I'm gonna throw this out there. What if, to help with the ABK transition or acquisition, when they do the Starfield showcase, they announce it's a 1-year exclusive to Xbox. To smooth over the FTC being like, hey, you said you had no financial incentive to limit, ZeniMax properties, and then you did, and now you're coming out here with Starfield. That'd be a great way for them to turn that tide of that conversation and be like, yes, this is going to be day and date on Game Pass. Yes, it's going to be on Xbox, 1-year exclusive. We can't wait to see this title land on Sony in a year. They might not say Sony, but they could say a 1-year exclusive, and that could start to that's a far-fetched prediction, but man, would that be a bombshell to be like, yeah, we're not keeping it over here for forever.
Do you think the reason they delayed Starfield, to even come out or have a date, is because of the litigation that's going on with them trying to get stopped from buying Activision Blizzard? Do you think that they're holding it back because one of the reasons that they're having this problem is because they said they weren't going to make Starfield exclusive? But when they bought the Bethesda, they're like, no, we're not going to make stuff exclusive, and then they made it exclusive. So do you think they're holding it back for that reason alone?
Yeah, they were really careful with how they said it to the EU. They said that they lacked financial incentive to limit ZeniMax properties, but they would still maybe do it on a case-by-case basis if they could justify it from a business perspective or whatever. So, I don't know. In the realm of this Redfall Starfield, why won't they talk? Why won't they show it? I 100% think it is related to the ABK deal, because Sony did not do their annual showcase last year, and the rumor was they don't want to start walking out and talking about exclusivity while they're actively opposing this deal, because you already had gaming press, being like, oh, they're hypocritical, which was an intellectually bankrupt position. It's like there's a giant difference between buying developers and getting exclusives and buying a publisher that represents a percentage of the entire industry. Like, they're not even equivalent at all. People saying those were equivalent are they're just farming for clicks. Like, that's not the same. So I do think Microsoft didn't want to come out strong with, yeah, Starfield only on Xbox, Redfall only on Xbox. They don't want to do that right now because it just adds to this idea that, like, yeah, you can't wait to buy up ABK so you can say the same thing about their property.
Yeah. I think a lot of people in chat, you guys are looking at it wrong when they're like, it's a system seller. Sure, Starfield's going to sell systems, but at the same time, you guys are like, and when I say you guys, I'm being very generalistic because not all of you are in this, what I'm saying, but Microsoft is not in old school mentality anymore that they have to sell more systems, right? This is why they're making xCloud, and this is why they're putting, the app on the Samsung TV. This is why they're doing it. They're not selling Xboxes anymore. They're selling Game Pass. Doesn't matter where you are, on what device you are. This is why they want the mobile market. They're trying to get Game Pass and games that are on Game Pass onto all these other platforms. You thinking that Microsoft is staying with Sony because Sony and Microsoft are competing? Lono said it earlier. Phil Spencer said they're not worried about PlayStation or Sony. They're worried about Google and Amazon for the streaming platform, right? And that's what they're worried about. So you guys all saying that, oh, sorry, Sony guys, you got to hit the... Like, it's not about them selling more consoles. They literally are just trying to sell a service because they have to do very little with the service. They made $3.9 billion last year for Game Pass. Like, and they didn't ship out games. That's games digitally on a system that people are paying $10 or $15 every single month for crewing. Just think about how much money that is. $200 to $300 million a month. That's the budget of a Grand Theft Auto 5. It was $250 million to make Grand Theft Auto 5. And every single month, they could buy a company, give them that money, and they could go make a Grand Theft Auto 5 size type of game with the budget they make every single month.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that we have commentary from Todd Howard about there is pressure on Starfield to sell systems, but that doesn't mean that Microsoft's going to view all of their own property that way anymore. I think they're going to take a software approach to this. They want their software everywhere, and I think it stands to reason that if a game hits Game Pass and makes Game Pass look amazing, and then 6 months to a year later it lands somewhere else, that still made Game Pass awesome. You got it first. You didn't just get it first. You didn't have to buy the game. Like, right. They'll have to buy the game on the other platforms. So I know that one's upsetting for people. They're like, no, there's no way they do that to Starfield. They're going to make everybody mad. And it's like, what do you care if 12 months later Microsoft says, we're about to make that money, man. PlayStation 5 is doing great. It's heavily in circulation. We can sell a bundled deal Starfield with all the updates and all the extras a year later for $60 or $70 to Sony users. How is that not a feather in your cap to be like, we're selling this, we're selling our property to Sony people and making money from them, and you're over here able to just play it on Game Pass?
I think that Microsoft is trying to make Game Pass into what Windows is to PCs, right? It's an operating system. They're trying to make the Game Pass like a household name where it's just, you have a TV, it's on there. You have a mobile phone, it's on there. You have wherever you are, they're just trying to market the Game Pass as a thing. That's going forward. Now, obviously, if it fails, then they're dead in the water. But it doesn't matter because Microsoft is almost a $3 trillion company, right? So overall, Microsoft is fine. Xbox might be in trouble down the road, but that's here nor there right now.
Yeah, Cujo, I'm not saying everybody that opposes Starfield going to Sony is upset. I'm not trying to be condescending and project emotional instability. I've had people tell me they would be upset if that happened. I've had people tell me people would be angry if that happens. I was merely representing what I've seen from people where they're like, oh no, they better not do that. They would be angered by that. Like, no, they promised us it would be ours, it's exclusive. So yeah, I wasn't trying to do that. I know people do that. And I hate that. I wasn't trying to do that. If you guys are like, I don't think so, I'm not projecting onto you that you're upset. I've actually had people say, oh, that would tick me off if they did that. I was like, who in the heck cares, right? Like, if they buy ABK, that's the strategy, man. Well, we'll put this stuff everywhere. We want to make money. They want to put Call of Duty on the Nintendo Switch, for crying out loud. Which is interesting to me about, like, how is that going to work? Cloud gaming on the Switch. I mean, I've not done it. I can't imagine it being a great experience because they've got a lot of games over there that have to run off the cloud. They're too big.
Well, PlayStation just did a thing. I read an article yesterday. They're having a cloud service working on to the higher end tier of the PlayStation Plus. Is that what it's called? The PlayStation Plus? I don't have a PlayStation, so that's their service, right? Yeah. So PlayStation Plus, the highest tier,
premium
will have the streaming service included with that, where you're cloud gaming streaming to your to the higher service stuff.
You can do that right now with PS Plus. Like, I can stream games. I can just play them without installing them to try them out.
I don't know. The article said that they were doing it.
Well, they're probably expanding it because it's only a handful of titles, and there's really old titles. That's the only way you can play them, is you have to stream them. You can't even install them. So they might be expanding it to more places, or maybe making it better. It's not that great. It really isn't. Right. Like, I love my PlayStation, but playing something through that streaming is just freaking horrible. The latency is awful. I can't imagine anybody doing that and being like, well, that was a good experience. Sign me up for more of that. Like, it's good to get into the game quickly and look at it, but you wouldn't want to play like that for more than a few minutes. It's pretty rough. And I've got pretty fast internet. It just wasn't good.
I've played on my mobile phone when I'm away on trips and stuff. And sometimes if I play single player games, it's like flawless. It's really nice. And then other times you log in and you're just like, oh God, yeah, this is unbearable. I can't do it.
Yeah, Joseph Staten tweeted yesterday, hey, folks, right now I'm 100% focused on helping people who lost their jobs find great new ones. The outpouring of support from other studios has been amazing. Please keep it coming. If you'd like a reference for someone you're considering, my DMs are open. Listen, I like Joseph Staten. I do. When they brought him on to Halo Infinite, I kind of got on a little bit of a hype train for Halo. I don't know if y'all remember this. When they revealed the multiplayer, I was like, bro, Halo might be back. Like, Joseph Staten's the guy. Like, he's the guy that can do it. So I'm bummed. I am bummed. Like, if you guys haven't seen that video yet, we'll send you there in a minute about is 343 being removed from Halo. And I'm bummed because I liked him. I thought this is it. They can put Halo in a good spot. And then it launched and I was like, oh my gosh. What happened? It's so sad. Like that, I don't know. I got fired up, and that whole story is just sad. Like, you hate to see. It just reminds me of Anthem. People in positions of leadership that just choked, and now they're gone. They're somewhere else. Like, all those people that failed Anthem, they're just working at other studios now. Man, frick you, bro. You ruin a game. Like, right. And then you got people that did it to 343, and they're probably just going to go work somewhere else. Man, come on. Like, that's irritating. I don't put anything on Joseph Staten. He was brought in in a crisis. Like, he got that game out the door. I'm telling you, he got moved to Xbox Game Publishing because they know he's an asset. They're like, this guy gets results. We need to get him out of 343. He's not gonna make it. Like, that place is aging him at a rapid rate. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a somber thing. What's happened with Halo and all those people losing their jobs. It freaking sucks.
It's sad, but it happens all the time. Like, yeah. Microsoft did it like 3-4 years ago. They got rid of like 25,000 people. So you feel bad for them, but there's a lot of people they trim the fat. Some people are useless, right, in certain departments, and they're sort of like the guy from Office Space, the guy with the stapler.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They kind of just move him over and just keep trying to get him out, and then finally they fire him. Not saying, because I'm talking about like back of house, not talking about devs. Just there's certain people they have to trim the fat, and other people sometimes are just casuals at war that take it. I've been canned from jobs when I was in that space before I was in the film industry. Sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are, just that department just gets nuked because they're like, well, we have to get rid of something. And instead of firing Todd, who makes $20 billion a year, they're like, oh, we could get rid of 10,000 people. That'll take the same salary as him. So, and they just get rid of all you guys. That's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I always find it to be a bummer. Well, I'm going to actually have you guys, I'm going to send you to that video. A lot of you might not have seen it yet, so you're going to want to check out my upload about is 343 being pulled off of Halo. I'll send you there in just a second. But before I do that, Mike, let them know where they can find you and what kind of content they can find.
You can find me on 30NSG. Thanks, Creature, for fixing that down below. You can see me on Monday through Thursday from 10 o'clock in the morning till about noon Eastern. I do a show called The Daily Grind, which is like Lono's show, but he talks about stuff. We talk about different topics. We have different opinions. It's a bit more of a talk show, live feel. Been doing that for 2 years. And then also in the evenings, we do Let's Plays. So we're going to be playing through, what are we playing next? We're playing Monster Hunter Rise this coming week. We're finishing out Star Wars The Skywalker Saga on Monday. We're also going to be playing Power Wash Simulator, DLC Tomb Raider. We're gonna play that. And then we also do a podcast on Thursday nights, which is our flagship at the end of the week. It's Generation X Gaming, the weekly podcast that goes over a few of the top stories from the past week, and we rant along the way. That's at 8 p.m. Easterns on Thursday nights, so you can check us out there.
Yeah, if that time slot works for you guys, right? Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Tonight, Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I do a member stream, and usually I'm hanging out with my wife. I'm going to be playing Police Officer Simulator with Hilly tonight. It'll be hilarious. I wanted a game like when we did Surgeon Simulator, so we found this, and we're like, oh my gosh, Super Troopers, let's go. That's going to be the theme of tonight. Either that or Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So make sure you're here tonight for that, members. And don't forget, tomorrow night is Star Wars Episode 2 watch party for members as well. You guys unlocked that last month. So I'm going to put a link in chat, and it is to that Halo video. If you guys missed it, it's doing really, really well. Go throw it a like. Go throw it a comment. Give it some love and watch it. I break down all the information that came out. Thanks so much for supporting us. If you've already watched my video, then go check out 30's channel. He'll say something in chat. You can click on his name and go check him out at 30NSG. His channel is over there just kicking out content like we do. So make sure and check him out over there. Thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you guys tonight and maybe over the weekend. And if not, we'll see you Monday for more great coverage. Thanks so much for watching.